I've been here at Rowan for 16 years. Prior to coming to Rowan, I worked in a grad program as a graduate assistant, and then prior to that I was a high school teacher. And in both of those places, mental illness was an issue there as well.
The way I see it, I would kind of, at least in the case of my high school specifically, I would sort of be forced to separate the facilities and resources available and the focus and importance that were given to said to the faculty members who dealt with those resources, because we did have two school psychologists, but one of them was booked all the time. All the time. He basically was only there, he rarely did individual meetings, he was basically only there to moderate group therapy. I didn't know we had a second school psychologist until the end of my junior year. I didn't know she existed. I thought it was only this one guy. She was slightly more available, but by that time, at least mentally, I felt like that shit passed.
When I was at a middle school, we had a suicide, and almost never talked about it, didn't say much about it. Just everybody just kind of bit down and swallowed hard and came back to school the next day. So that would be like the worst case. But no, we talk about it in maybe more commonly in a general sense. Hey, students are anxious. What can you do to kind of alleviate that? But it's not been taken on as a focus of discussion.
So, okay, I have to say that when I first moved in here, I thought I knew everything that I had to know because, at orientation and accepted students day, etc., we were told that, there are counselors here that can help you, and there's a psychiatrist here too, and then also the medical stuff. But the thing is that there were some, small, more administrative stuff that I had no idea was necessary, that I didn't know that you had to go through that stuff when I actually came into campus. I didn't know that the amount of counselors they had was limited. I didn't know that the demand was so high that they run out really quickly. I'd say I feel like I entered only knowing maybe about 3/4 of maybe what I should have known about the Wellness Center.
My experience with the Wellness Center has been one where it's hard to get your foot in the door. It's hard to get the attention that you need to help the student. And it's, I guess, about 7 years ago in a grad class, I had a student who wasn't doing very well. It was a night class. And it was the night that we were doing works in progress presentations, and I had a set list of questions that I would ask every student during the presentation, and she couldn't answer any of the questions, and she was really flustered. You could tell that she hadn't prepared and she was behind, and she went home that night, and in driving she tweeted out to our class members that she was going to she was fighting she was trying to resist running her headlights into the headlights of an oncoming car. So I took that as kind of a cry for help. They had all seen it and contacted me that night, and I reached out to the Wellness Center. Nothing. Next day, nothing. And I reached out to my chair, and we kind of had to shake some bars to get their attention, to get a response from them. In fact, the next day I came to school early, and there was a grad student from that class waiting for me at my office. I mean, everybody was really nervous about this student's kind of mental state. Had she killed herself, we would all be implicated. We would all feel terrible and feel like we weren't acting responsibly. And so on day 3, they sent her an electronic survey, a risk threat analysis. And she took it. She hadn't come to school after that. This was 3 days later, still has not come back to school, but she took the risk threat analysis, and I guess she did all right because They said she wasn't a risk to herself or anyone else, and they were done. And she did come back to school the following week, but missed the whole week of school. It was on a Monday, and we didn't see her again until the following Monday. Just kept completely out of the loop. And that was a terrible experience for me because it brought up a lot of the prior suicide of a student that I had when I was teaching middle school, and it wasn't that long after that. And I swore then that if there was a hint of that kind of mental distress that I was going to act. I wasn't going to just kind of wait it out or say, oh, it's not going to happen here, because it's happened twice to me, once in a high school, once in a middle school, and then I could just see this kind of unfolding again, and in both cases at the high school and middle school suicides, we didn't get a lot of advance notice. We didn't see a lot of signs. It's like they're not taking our advice, they're not taking our emails seriously. They often respond back to us days later with a kind of a formulaic letter. Oh, thank you for contacting the Wellness Center. We're so happy to be here to respond to you and your students' needs. And it's just kind of like a formulaic kind of response, when really what we need are more personal kinds of conversations about what to do.
I go to the Wellness Center on average about 2 times a week. Some weeks it'll be 3 times, all for different things. So I go once for general counseling, which is basically just a therapy session. The second time I go is for my DBT group, which is it's just a group of us together who talk with counselors, and we work through, sorting out our anxieties and, other issues we feel are kind of pressing in our lives. And then the third time I go, which is more often every other week, is I check in with the school psychiatrist because I'm on Zoloft, and, well, actually, it's kind of new for me, so it's sort of policy to continuously check up on someone if they're on a new medication. So I go to her like every other week just to give her an update, be like, hey, I'm not dead. And then she's like, cool, and then go see her again in another 2 weeks. I have this one friend who goes to, I'm a part of this club called Prism, and I was talking to him one weekend, and he said that he has a serious eating disorder, and he's really depressed. And, I was sort of like, hey, maybe you can go to the Wellness Center. And he was like, well, tried that. He went multiple times. You know how, you have to get screened before you talk to a counselor? Every single time he got screened, the person who was screening him was like, we don't think you need counseling. And that blew me away. I was like, did you tell them you have an eating disorder, that you have depression? He's like, yeah. So if they know that, I really don't know why they denied him access.
And one just as recently as last year, it's 20 minutes before I was ready to go to class, I get an email from a student in my class saying, ex-student hasn't been out of bed for 2 days, and her roommates are concerned, and I know she's missing class, and I'm concerned, and can you help? And so right away I try to get the Wellness Center on the line, and they don't answer their phone. They have a recording. They have lots of those kinds of loops. Press 1 if it's this, press 2 if it's that, press 3 if it's and by the time you get all done with that, I had to go to class. And I dashed off a quick verbal message. But, and again, days later, I get a response. And my students wanted to know right then, what's going to happen. And it was close to the time where Rowan had a student jump off of the parking garage. So it was close, it was in that time frame. So you would think they would be a little bit more responsive. I think the culture is more complicated. College is hard. I think it's not just happening at Rowan, it's happening everywhere. And like one thing I mentioned before, I think, students, I think, are coming from maybe more supportive environments at home, and then they come to school and don't bring all of their support mechanisms with them, or they want to like stand on their own 2 feet and see if they can make it on their own, and if there's not a safety net, things kind of snowball. What I don't like to see is like, the come pet the rabbits, it's final exam time, because at the same time there's like really people in crisis, and then here, go pet a rabbit. I just don't like that, the petting of the animals thing, and service animals, and I know that they're helpful for some people, but it's not like the answer, it's going to be that easy, just like go pet a rabbit.
They're effective in the same way that eating a bowl of ice cream is effective. I can't say it does nothing. You're stressed and you go and you pet a cute puppy and it's playful and it'll cheer you up a little bit, but it's like putting a Band-Aid on like a gaping war wound, I know it's a dramatic way of putting it, but it is I'm gonna say, it feels nice, but it's not actually gonna help, because the human brain can emote various different things at various different times. I can be happy for a moment, even if I'm having a really awful day, because your brain will just respond to those things. Most people love puppies. When they see the puppy, they'll be happy for a second. Does that suddenly erase any underlying trauma and guilt that they have, that they've welled up for years? No, absolutely not. It's a really temporary solution. I think it's sweet. Like, I don't think it's something that should go away. Like, it's nice. People like it. And it does help a little bit. It helps them feel better a little bit. But I think people who use stuff like that as substitutes for getting actual assistance with their mental health, it's not sustainable at all. I think the greatest things that kind of like weighed on me, one kind of being adjusting to a new social dynamic. I know probably a lot of people say that, but it's very true. I had a nice group of friends in high school, and then I moved here, and I like the people I talk to, but I realized that the dynamic was just completely different. I couldn't do all the same things I could do with my old friends, and I think that when you're kind of forced to change not only like your living environment, but also the environment of people that you hang out with and interact with, etc., I think it forces a change within you.
And then there's the financial end for students. It's very expensive. It's expensive to eat, to sleep, to buy your textbooks, just to come to school. It's very, tuition's high, so, all those things kind of combine together. Can I ask you a question? It's like when you look at Rowan Boulevard and you see, I don't know if you even go down there, I don't know, do you buy a $10 hamburger? Do you ever, do you like look at those places and say like, who's got money to spend, who's got $15 to spend for lunch at Pliable? I mean, it's great, it's a big treat, but like, who can afford that? It's out of the range of I would say even professors. Like, I don't spend $15 on lunch every day. I can't afford it. Yeah, so like, what do you think about, it's like, here's Rowan Boulevard, and it's all glitzy and expensive. Now, the food bank is right around the corner of Rowan Boulevard. It's like, why don't we have food stores on Rowan Boulevard that students can afford to eat at?
I do know other people, like some other upperclassmen, who that is a frequent concern of theirs. Like, I have a friend who actually also goes to prison, different person, who worries about when he's going to eat, like, every day. And that really sucks. And it's basically because he doesn't have a meal plan. He can't guarantee he's going to get food on campus, So I do know that factors in for a lot of people. Maybe like the next generation of students will come in with more of those skills. This is all kind of like, I know for the university,
kind of took the administration off guard, and they didn't, and maybe they were reluctant to respond to the needs and the cost of those needs. And I don't know if I want to say this, but a year or two ago, there was this plan by the administration that students could get therapy, get their therapy on their health coverage, which would mean for a lot of students that their parents would then be notified that they were going to sessions, and that was a breach of their confidentiality, and they weren't coming because of that, and so that's kind of like a tone deafness at the administrative level that I think is kind of getting better. I'm hopeful that that's getting better. So different levels. It's not just a Band-Aid. It's going to be like a shift in the culture of like, look, we work so hard to get these students to come here. We have to provide for them, and I think that's sinking in. It's not perfect, and we still make mistakes, but I think that's kind of sinking in now that students need services, and they're going to need more and more services as the kind of student, non-traditional students enroll in increasing numbers.